The movie begins with a scene that shows Lightning McQueen, a famous red race car making his way onto the racetrack. He's a popular figure and the spotlight is on him. The race begins, and McQueen expertly makes his way past numerous cars. According to the commentators, Lightning McQueen is in the running for the Piston Cup. However, he has two major competitors to contend with: a famous legend named Strip Weathers, who has been a star race car for years, and a grumpy green car named Chick Hicks, who'd been chasing the cup his entire life. As the race commences, Lightning McQueen makes his way past one car after the other, but when he reaches Hicks, the grumpy green car pulls a dirty stunt that makes McQueen lose his balance and fall behind. He then performs that dirty trick again, causing havoc on the racetrack. However, McQueen isn't giving up and tries his best to catch up. As all the cars go in for a pit stop, Hicks is proud of himself but is shocked when he sees that McQueen isn't stopping to get his tires changed. Instead, he proceeds with the race. This puts the red car in the lead position by a great distance, and Hicks starts getting desperate to catch up. Lightning McQueen keeps going, and even when it's time for a second tire change, Lightning McQueen chooses not to change his tires, opting for only gas instead. He gains an incredible gap ahead of the rest of the cars and is only one lap away from winning the Piston Cup. However, only one turn away from his title, McQueen loses a tire. The other cars are alerted about this, and they try to speed up. McQueen loses another tire only 100 meters away from his title, but the cars aren't slowing down. Lightning McQueen finally gets to the finish line, but it's a close call. However, he's sure of his fate as the winner. During the backstage interview, he calls himself a one-man show. This upsets his crew of tire specialists, and they chose to quit. Lightning McQueen isn't moved and doesn't fail to steal the spotlight for himself despite Hicks' taunts. After getting some good advice from Weathers about getting a good team, and fantasizing about getting Weathers' Team Dinoco behind him, it's finally time to announce the winners. Confident that he's won the race, Lightning McQueen leaps onto the stage before the winner is announced, but is shocked to find that it's a three-way tie between himself, Hicks, and Weathers. The sports officials announced that a tiebreaker race would be held between the winners in California a week from then. McQueen isn't the only one interested in the Dinoco team, and is challenged by Hicks about getting the deal by reaching California first. McQueen makes his way back to his transporter truck, Mac. Lightning McQueen is in a hurry to leave, but Mac informs him that his trailer is with his sponsors, much to McQueen's dismay. After a not-so-enthusiastic meeting with his sponsors, McQueen finally leaves for California, excited about getting the deal with Dinoco once he wins the race. After getting on a call with his new agent, Harvey, McQueen forces Mark to drive all night, desperate to reach California before Hicks. Mac is nodding off, and thanks to some road bullies who drive him off track, McQueen's trailer accidentally gets opened, ejecting the sleeping race car. McQueen is woken by the bright headlights and noisy horns of the busy traffic, and is shocked to find himself on the road. He tries to find his transporter truck, but there are too many trailers on the road, making it difficult for him to find his truck. McQueen branches off at the interstate, chasing a truck he believes to be his transporter. After a rather dangerous encounter getting past a train, McQueen finally reaches the truck only to find that it isn't his transporter. He heads back, trying to make his way toward the interstate where he had come from, but he finds himself in trouble with a local cop. The cop's exhaust pipes are rather rusty and start making loud noises, but McQueen mistakes this, thinking the cop is shooting at him. After a rather rough and clumsy chase through a local town, McQueen is finally caught. Meanwhile, Mac arrives in California the following morning, but McQueen is reported missing by the media. That morning, Lightning McQueen wakes up with a parking boot on his tire. He's in a suburban town called Radiator Springs where he meets a local tow truck named Mater. McQueen tries to trick the locals into freeing him, but thankfully, the local cop arrives just in time to stop Mater. They take him to court where the locals are gathered, seemingly furious about the destruction that McQueen caused the previous night. He doesn't have a lawyer, so they assign Mater to be his lawyer. Just then, Doc, the judge, makes his way into the courtroom. Upon seeing McQueen, he realizes that he's a race car and dismisses him, saying race cars are nothing but trouble, and he wants his town to have nothing to do with them. Just as McQueen is celebrating his victory, a lawyer named Sally enters the courtroom. McQueen tries to flirt with her, thinking she's his lawyer, but it turns out that she's the local lawyer in the town. With a little bit of persuasion, she convinces the locals and the judge that McQueen needs to pay for the damages that he caused, and the judge decides to sentence McQueen to community service, using a road paving machine to fix the road. Doc orders Mater to hook up McQueen to the paving machine, but the old tow truck releases his parking boot first. McQueen doesn't waste any time and zooms off, making his way out of town to the interstate, but he runs out of gas as his gas had been previously siphoned. McQueen gets hooked up to the paving machine and gets to work. Just then, two traveling cars make their way into town, and the locals try to make a good impression to get them to buy something. However, the visitors are not interested in being customers, and just want to find their way to the interstate. McQueen tries to get them to free him, but they don't buy his story and leave him to his fate. The townsfolk disperse, but just then, the radio is turned on, and McQueen hears news about him being missing. The newscaster also discloses that the Chick Hicks, McQueen's rival, had already made it to the track, and was the first car to try out the track before the race. McQueen gets a rather unpleasant picture of Hicks getting the Dinoco deal before him. This gets him motivated to finish his sentence as quickly as possible so he can get back to the race. He finishes the road in only an hour, but it's a mess. McQueen tries to bargain his way out, saying he did his part of the deal, but Doc orders him to start over because he made the road worse. McQueen makes a side comment that he's a race car and cannot do the work of a bulldozer, and Doc proceeds to challenge him into a race, saying that if McQueen wins, he would be freed, but if he wins, McQueen would have to start over. They shake on the deal and head over to the local racetrack. McQueen seems confident, but Doc looks on seemingly unimpressed. The flag is raised and McQueen takes off. However, Doc remains at the starting line. Everyone seems confused about this, but Doc casually calls Mater because McQueen may need a tow truck. Just as Doc had predicted, McQueen crashes into a cluster of cacti. Doc and Mater get there just in time to tow him out, and McQueen, surprised he can't turn on the dirt road, ends up upholding his end of the deal, scraping the rough paving he had fixed all through the night. The following morning, the locals come out of their homes and are greeted by a finely paved road. Everyone is impressed, including Doc, but McQueen still has a long way to go until he's finished. McQueen is nowhere to be seen, but after looking around, Doc finally finds McQueen on the dirt road racetrack, trying to make that turn he failed to make previously. Doc gives him some advice, saying that racing on a dirt road is very different from racing on asphalt. He gives McQueen a piece of rather ridiculous advice about how to turn, saying that to turn left, he needed to turn left. McQueen is perplexed and dismisses the idea, but when Doc leaves the scene, he decides to test it out, only to find himself in another cluster of cacti. Back in the town, McQueen continues paving the road while pondering about the turn he couldn't easily make. The town folks seem motivated by their new road, as everyone is taking good care of their property, pimping it up to match the new road standard. Sally sees this and is grateful to McQueen, so she offers him a nice place to stay for the night. After a little bit of flirting, McQueen watches Sally leave the scene, but just then, Mater suddenly makes his appearance, inviting McQueen to an event that would be happening that night. After a bit of coaxing, Mater finally gets McQueen to agree. That night, McQueen finds himself in a grass field, and Mater reveals that they would be trailer tipping. Mater goes around blowing his horn and startling the sleeping tractors, making them tip over on their backs, giving him a good laugh. He invites McQueen to do the same, but McQueen says he doesn't have a horn. After a bit of taunting and teasing from Mater, McQueen finally agrees to try something. He steps in front of a tractor and revs his engine. This startles all the tractors in the area, making them all tip over. While Mater and McQueen are having a good laugh, the big harvester machine named Frank makes an angry appearance and chases the two intruders out of his grass field. The two troublemakers make their way back into town, and Mater offers to take McQueen back to his impound lot, but McQueen reveals that Sally had invited him to stay in one of the cozy cones. Mater proceeds to tease McQueen about being in love with Sally, not knowing that she was overhearing their conversation. Matters is driving backward while taunting the race car, and this creeps out McQueen, but Matters reassures McQueen, claiming to be the best backward racer alive and showing a rather reckless but impressive demonstration. After leaving, McQueen proceeds into his cozy cone lodging. Sally visits McQueen, and after some small talk, reveals that Mater trusts him. He thanks her for the lodging and they go their separate ways. The following morning, McQueen wakes up from a nightmare with a start. He's reminded about the urgent need to get to the race and goes to find the sheriff. He meets the sheriff with Doc at a mechanic shop, but they don't give him any audience and chase him out. McQueen angrily leaves them and stumbles upon an old garage. Here he discovers Doc's true identity as the legendary Hudson Hornet, who won 3 Piston Cups during his prime. Just then, Doc finds him in his garage and chases him out despite McQueen's excitement to talk to him. Excited about his discovery, McQueen reveals Doc's true identity to the locals, but they don't believe him. Just then, Sally tops up his fuel tank and asks him to take a ride with her. McQueen is tempted to make a run for it, which the sheriff is alert to, but he decides not to break Sally's trust and follows her instead. They both have a great time, driving down empty roads, forming a little bond, until Sally brings him to a place called Wheelwell, which used to be the most popular stop on the road. Here she tells him her story about how she used to be an attorney in LA, but she was never happy. She ran away but broke down on the road when Doc found her and took her in. The townfolk fixed her, and she decided to stay there ever since. When he asks her why she stayed, he reveals to her that she fell in love with the landscape and that the town, Radiator Springs, used to be a busy place. However, ever since they made the interstate road that bypasses the town, Radiator Springs was never the same again, and many cars ran out of business, but she's determined to make it a busy town again. They return to the town, but Mater seems to have caused some trouble, as the tractor herd was invading the town. The locals are trying to handle the situation and gather the tractors, but one leaves the herd, heading out of town. McQueen volunteers to get that tractor when he sees Doc on the racetrack. pulling some amazing racing stunts. McQueen tries to compliment him, but Doc doesn't want to talk, zooming off and leaving McQueen chasing after him. Back at the garage, McQueen finally catches up to Doc and asks a series of questions. McQueen seems to think that Doc quit racing, but Doc reveals that his career ended after a car crash. They get into a little argument, and Doc storms off, leaving McQueen in the garage. The following morning, the locals wake up to see a completed road. However, everyone except Doc seems sad that McQueen left without saying goodbye. Just as everyone is brooding, McQueen makes his appearance, and the atmosphere seems joyful again. McQueen then proceeds to patronize Luigi, getting new tires from him. He also decides to help every other person in town, buying their products, purchasing new fuel, and getting a new paint job. The townspeople show him off to Sally, and she seems impressed. He goes further by showing her the fixed neon signs of everyone in town, and Sally is more than grateful. The two have their little moment together, but just then, the locals are excited as it looks like they are getting new customers, but it turns out to be the media. McQueen is discovered by the media, and they're all over him, interrupting his little moment. He reunites with Mark, his transporter truck, and gets to talk with his new agent Harvey over the call. After saying a rather sad goodbye to Sally, and not even getting the chance to say goodbye to the locals, McQueen is forced into his trailer, and they hit the road toward California. Just as everyone is leaving, a reporter thanks Doc for placing the call. Sally overhears them and gets angry with Doc for being so selfish. The reporters leave town, and the locals of Radiator Springs are saddened that they were unable to say their goodbyes to McQueen before they carried him off. This makes Doc feel rather guilty as the town goes back to sleep. Back in California, everyone is getting ready for the big race. They are tagging it the race of the century, and thousands of cars are gathered to watch the big race. After McQueen's little bit of internal motivation and a little taunt from Hicks, the race between the three champions finally kicks off. McQueen seems to be having some trouble concentrating, and Hicks' tricks are working on him. He loses balance and drifts out of the racing track. McQueen is unmotivated and on the verge of giving up, but just then, he hears Doc's voice over his radio. He looks over and is shocked to see Doc filling up the spot as his crew chief. Some of his friends from Radiator Springs also gathered there to see him race. He drops by for a pit stop, and after a word of encouragement from Doc, McQueen joins the race again, a bit more fired up. Just then, the commentators notice McQueen's crew advisor, and everyone is shocked to find that it's the legendary Hudson Hornets from over 50 years ago. Meanwhile, McQueen, who was down by one lap, drives past his competitors and enters the lead lap, gradually closing the gap between them. Lap after lap goes by, and McQueen finally catches up to his contenders. Just as he's about to drive past Hicks, the green race car pulls another trick on him. It looks like McQueen is about to lose his bearings again, but just then, he uses the reverse driving technique that he learned from Mater and successfully drives past the scheming green race car. There are only 10 laps to go, and McQueen is back in the race with his contenders. Just then, Hicks pulls another trick on him, and McQueen loses a tire. He drops by for a tire change, and Guido changes them at lightning speed, shocking everyone to silence. McQueen gets back into the race and catches up to the other two race cars. However, Hicks is not giving him a moment to breathe. He pulls another trick, this time affecting everyone including himself. It looks as though McQueen is about to lose his bearings again, but thanks to the turn left to go right lesson from Doc, he manages to stay in the race, comfortably taking the lead. It looks like McQueen is about to win the race, but Hicks, coming in at the rear, seems desperate. He pulls one of his dirty tricks on Weathers, and the old legend tumbles out of the race, unable to move. Meanwhile, McQueen is just a hair's breadth away from the finish line. However, at the last moment, McQueen suddenly hits the brakes, letting Hicks win the race. Everyone is watching in silence as McQueen makes his way back to the former legend, ensuring that he finishes his race. The moment Weathers and McQueen cross the line, the crowd goes wild, cheering them on. Hicks is busy celebrating his victory, but nobody will celebrate with him. McQueen gets the offer to be the face of Dinoco, despite not winning the race, but with one glance at his friends, he decides to politely decline. However, the Dinoco boss does offer him one favor, and McQueen chooses to give that to his friend Mater, granting Mater his wish of being on a helicopter ride. Thanks to McQueen's fame, Luigi and the town folks were now getting the recognition they deserved. McQueen finally gets his time alone with Sally, and after some teasing from Mater, the story ends with Sally and McQueen racing down the empty highway.